You don't get the life that you want, you get the life that results from the decisions that you make. And the truth is, we don't often make bad decisions because we lack information. We make bad decisions because our brain naturally relies on bias and shortcuts that distorts our judgment. My name is Tiago Raposo Santos, I'm a psychologist, and in this video I'm going to show you 5 common cognitive biases that are constantly influencing our decision making so that you can actually start to make choices that are based on the results that you want and not based on these mental shortcuts that our brain is automatically defaulting to. Number 1, confirmation bias. We don't see reality, we see what we expect to see. Our brain is wired for efficiency because at the basic level, energy equals survival. So to conserve energy and reduce uncertainty, our brain is constantly trying to predict what's going to happen next. Now, the problem is that once it starts predicting, it also starts favoring information that is going to support that model. It's going to find information that supports the mental model that has been already pre-established while downplaying the information and the circumstances that are going to contradict that previous model that has been already established. We overlook what does not align with our beliefs and we become blind to better alternatives. So what we want to do is to become more aware of this natural tendency and find ways that we can expose ourselves to these blind spots. And instead of just focusing on what already confirms and supports our current viewpoints, our beliefs, we can ask ourselves, what am I not seeing because I already want this to be true? What would someone more skeptical notice here? Or what would someone with a very different life experience see that I'm not currently seeing? Another way to reduce this bias is to deliberately expose ourselves to other realities, to different people, to different backgrounds, to different experiences. Speak with people from different backgrounds, with different values, instead of naturally rejecting them just because they feel odd, just because they are different than you. Actually find and try to have conversations with them, even if they are coming from a completely different viewpoint, and and sometimes it can feel kind of itchy, like you don't really like them because they have certain values or beliefs that are completely polarizing with yours. But it's very important, if you want to expose yourselves beyond this confirmation tendency, you want to deliberately expose to these nuances, to broaden up your perspectives, and then find the nuggets, find the things that make sense to your own viewpoints. But this is the only way that you can grow in your awareness, is by deliberately going beyond your current zone, that and feeding information that is just validating your current viewpoints. So consume more information from different sources, read books from different genres, try to see videos from different perspectives. Don't tunnel vision into what you like, into what you believe. Expose yourself to contrarian beliefs, because that's the only way you are going to grow, but also it increases your understanding for the other side. And this is a very valuable tool when you are trying to create union or pacify with someone, even in a personal relationship. You are going to end up inevitably into conflicts, and conflicts in essence is just two people are disaligned. Now if you want to come into agreement, it means that you have to come into alignment once again. But in order to do that, you have to come outside of your viewpoint and adopt the other person viewpoint until you guys can align into a new third alternative, where now instead of being in conflict, you can be aligned. Okay, So even if you don't truly believe in certain things, just practicing this skill is going to make wonders for your personal relationships. Number two, sunk cost bias. The more we invest into something, the harder it becomes to walk away. We have all stayed in situations far longer than we should. Bad investments, bad relationships, bad businesses, bad jobs, and deep down, we already know that they no longer make sense, and we know that we should let them go and move on. But because we have already invested so much of ourselves, we have already invested so much time, so much effort, so much emotions, we don't really want to let that go. And this creates an inner conflict. Part of us knows that that is not going to work out, that there are certain red flags in place that are telling us that it's time to move on. But at the same time, there is another part of us telling us, I have already put so much effort into this. I have already given up so much to now just let it go. I don't want to start it all over again. And so we stay. And this is what we call sunk cost bias. Research shows that people become more likely to continue something once time, money, energy, and effort have been already invested. So now we are no longer judging the decision based on what is the current reality. We are judging it based on what is going to cost us to walk away. And because we don't want to face the pain of letting go of that cost, we stay far too long. Our brain, it struggles to separate the past cost from present choice for two main reasons. Number one, it's trying to preserve energy. It does not want the burden of having to start all over again because it requires energy, and energy equals survivability. Number two, our brain is trying to protect our ego. When we have to admit it, maybe I was wrong there. Maybe I did the wrong call. Maybe I shouldn't have invested into that business. Or maybe I did not read properly the multiple yellow and red flags that this relationship or that this person was clearly showing me. Now, in order to walk away, we need to admit to ourselves that we were wrong, that we made a mistake. And our brain is constantly trying to protect our ego, because when we admit that we were wrong, it can jeopardize our sense of identity, especially if we are coming from a sense of low self-esteem. If our worth is based on outcomes, is based on what we can present to the external reality, then it's very hard to, every time you are faced with mistakes and difficulties, to just walk away, because in essence you have to admit to yourself that you failed there, and obviously that is going to hurt your ego. So if we want to avoid sunk cost bias, what we need to do is to start asking ourselves, okay, if I was going to start fresh today, would I still choose this? Or is this truly aligned with where I want to go? For example, in a relationship, like, is this person embodying the values and the principles that I want to manifest into my future and into my family? Maybe not, maybe yes, I don't know. But you have to ask yourself. It's not just because you have been with that person for 10 years that it that you should stay there, especially if they are clearly showing red flags that they are not the person that is aligned with the values, that the principles that are important to you, and also that those values and those principles that are important for your future family. Number three, framing bias. We don't just react to information, we react to the way information is presented. Most people think that they make decisions purely based on logic facts, but in reality, the exact information can lead to very different decisions depending on the way it is presented. Daniel Kahneman, through his work on behavioral economics, It showed that people make different choices depending on whether the same outcome is presented in terms of gains or losses, even when the names are exactly the same. And this happens because the brain uses these mental shortcuts to judge information more quickly. So the words that we use, the angles that we are using, the emphasis, they all influence our judgment far more than we realize. For example, when something is framed as a gain, a loss, or a success, that frame becomes part of the decision itself because the mind does not process information in a vacuum, it processes meaning. For example, when something is presented as a gain, as a success, as a failure, that frame becomes part of the decision itself because the mind does not process information in a vacuum, it processes the meaning. Let's imagine that someone is making you an offer or a proposal and they say, "We have found that there is 80% chance that this will work," versus, "We have found that there is 20% chance that this will fail." Even though nothing actually changed, the numbers are exactly the same. The 80% sounds way more reassuring than the 20% because that feel way more caution. Because the way we present information is going to make our brain judge the meaning completely different. While 80% is framed as a gain, and that reassures us, when we start by framing when we start with the 20% and if we frame it as a loss, our brain focus on that, even though logically it makes no sense. But again, if we believe that we are judging based on logic, but in fact our brain is using that data, but then is giving them an emotional weight that will then impact and influence the way we take decisions moving forward. That's why in Proverbs 11:14 says that where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. Number four, loss aversion. We often do more to avoid losing than to gain something better. Prospect theory showed that losses tend to weight more heavily on us than gains, and that happens because the brain is highly sensitive to threats and depletion. So when a decision feels like it may involve a loss, our emotional systems often reacts before our rational system has fully weighed the real trade-off. And this is where many of us get our thinking and our judgment distorted because many times we are not evaluating the decision through the lens of what is exactly the best long-term outcome here. We are thinking through, what if I lose something? What if I'm going to get hurt? And that is often the trap because we end up settling for mediocre options just to avoid discomfort. So what we can do in this instance is to ask ourselves, am I rejecting this because it's truly a bad option, or is that an element of fear that is influencing or controlling my decision? Because when our decisions become more aligned with long term value and less driven by our own insecurities and fear, that's when our life starts getting better because we don't get the life that we deserve. We get the life that results from the decisions that we make. Number five, negative bias. Our brain spots threats faster than opportunities. In 2001, a very widely cited study in Review of General Psychology, they concluded across many psychological domains that bad is always stronger than good, which means that our brain is naturally paying more attention to what could possibly hurt us than what could possibly benefit us. And from a survivability perspective, this makes a lot of sense. And obviously, this is going to influence massively our decision making because we end up overweighting possible downsides while undervaluing the benefits. That is why, even when something has a huge upside, one small fear, one small doubt, it can completely dominate the entire decision. And this is why we often lose good opportunities, and also why fear-based messages work so well. Let's imagine that you just made a presentation or you just uploaded a video or something, some sort of content online, and you got 50 comments. 48 were positive and 2 were extremely nasty and negative. From a practical standpoint, that means that from those 50 comments, 96% were positive and only 4% were actually negative. But what does our mind naturally do? You are going to fixate on those 2 negative comments or the 4% negative. And meanwhile, the 96% is barely registered. And this is actually how negative bias works. You are going to make a small, very small negative feel bigger than the positive. This is literally how most of the headlines, all television segments, all YouTube titles, all thumbnails, they are built. They built the foundation, they built upon fear-based messaging, because they know that when we are presented with negative information that can be possibly threatened, our brain is going to detect that faster because it's linked with our survivability ability. So the real wisdom is to make sure that danger, that threat, that loss, that fear is not the only thing that you are going to focus on. The biggest threat to good decision making isn't always what you don't know. It's what you think you know without questioning it. So the goal isn't to become perfectly unbiased, because that's impossible. That's how our brain works. The goal is to become aware of these naturally tendencies, of these biases, so that we don't end up making confident decisions that take us towards the wrong direction and towards the wrong path. Because remember, the quality of our life is always connected to the quality of our decisions. But better decisions, they only begin when we stop trusting these mental shortcuts that our brain is automatically defaulting to.